and your neighbor is yourself. By the way, where did he get those? The Torah. I like Mark. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind and your strength. He's quoting Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu. Hear, O Israel, obey, O Israel. The word translated means both. It means the same. There was no understanding in God's mind or the Hebrews of just listen. You do something about it. And the other one comes from Leviticus 19:18. Now, what do those have to do with the Ten Commandments? It doesn't sound like he's talking about the Ten Commandments. Does it? It's love. Okay, here's where I could spend a lot of time. I don't want to, although Dan, you read Deuteronomy 10:12. It's actually in there. Somebody want to read John 14:21.
He who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father.
He who has... Okay, thank you. He who has my commandments and keeps them is the one who loves me. That's a definition of love. What does it mean to love Jesus? Keep his commandments. Okay? I want to read a statement. I would like to spend time in tying this more with the Bible, but I want to read a statement that ties this to me. SDA Bible Commentary, Volume 1, page 1104. It's Ellen White's comments. The law of Jehovah, dating back to creation, was comprised of the two great principles. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment, and the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. These two principles embrace the first four commandments, showing the duty of man to God, and the last six, showing the duty of man to his fellow men. The principles were more explicitly stated to man after the fall, and worded to meet the case of fallen intelligences. This was necessary in consequence of the minds of men being blinded by transgression. Ten Commandments are a spelling out of love to God and love to man. That's from Signs of the Time, April 15, 1875. The law of God existed before the creation of man, or else Adam could not have sinned. After the transgression of Adam, the principles of the law were not changed, but were definitely arranged and expressed to meet man in his fallen condition. Christ in council with his Father, instituted the system of sacrificial offerings, that death, instead of being immediately visited upon the transgressor, should be transferred to a victim, which should prefigure the great and perfect offering of the Son of God. So the Ten Commandments are spelling out the boundaries of love. It's not a bunch of do's and don'ts. For us dummies, which we are. I'll give you an example. You can go through all the commandments and do this, but I'll give you an example in the seventh commandment. Back in the summer of '66, I was a student literature evangelist in Bellingham, Washington, almost to Canada. I lasted a whole 3 weeks. But I canvassed a man from American Samoa. And he says, in Samoa, we treat people well. We give them a woman for the night. Well, sharing, isn't that loving? The seventh commandment comes back and says, that is not love. And if you think every one of these, if they were obeyed, we'd have far less problems in our lives and in our society. Sexually transmitted diseases would be gone in a generation. Probably a lot of divorces would be gone. And so I think that sometimes we separate the Ten Commandments from their real context, is that they're about love to God and man. They put the boundaries, and they're a guide to our life. They're an owner's manual. I pick up the owner's manual for our Toyota, and it said put in 5W30 weight oil. Yeah, Toyota says, I'd like honey better. How long do you think it's going to work? Okay. We do that, though, with God as people. Now, one other little thing. I've heard that back in the days when I was a kid, we were legalistic in the church. And there may be some truth to that, but there's something else, I think, going on. There has been research done on the stages of moral development. Probably the most famous one was Lawrence Kohlberg, and 50 years ago I did some case studies. He's very anti-Christian. Probably the simplest one was Jean Piaget. He walked around, I forget what city in Switzerland, and watched kids playing marbles. And he found there was a pattern. First of all, they were really bound by the rules. And then they did a little longer, got a little older, they started throwing the rules out. And then they got to a level where they internalized the rules. They realized they were there for a reason. And I think the point I want to get from that is, there are people, when people are young, they go through these stages. When they're new in a church, they go through these stages. And we go through the rules. We don't have to throw them out, but we tend to. And we internalize. But the point I think these people that did the research came up with is you don't get to the higher levels if you don't do the lower ones. So we never get to this higher stage that we'd like if they don't learn the rules. And people coming into the church are the same way. They're children. So what do we do? Anyhow, so there's my little hobby horse for the day. But I do think, I've heard chatter even here at other churches that we confuse. Ten Commandments are not about here's a bunch of stuff to do. It's about, God gives them to us for our good. By the way, let me ask another question. What's more important? Getting into heaven or pleasing God? Okay. Now, we need to have respect for the recompense of the reward, as the King James Version says, and he talking about Moses. No, we don't just do that. But I think real faith is, God, what's your way? And let him take care, let him take care of the future. And he will. That's faith. Okay, now maybe that's not quite as far from our lesson today. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the lesson. Last time teachers are supposed to review and put it in context. We talked about worship in a war zone. Was it Mary that gave the children's story about Desmond T. Doss? Yeah. I'm thinking that one of the things that Desmond D. Doss did when they were there on the Masada Escarpment is he actually one Sabbath asked them to wait to go into battle until he studied his Sabbath School lesson. There was another time he prayed, and his unit didn't lose anybody, another unit got decimated. So God doesn't always do that. But put first things first, and God will take care of the rest. Next week, it's going to be the heirs of the promises, coming into the actual taking the promised land. Kind of as a type is going to the heavenly promised land. But this week, anybody know what we're talking about this week? Joshua and Caleb. Would you like to meet them in a dark alley at night? I would like to have them with me in a dark alley at night. Okay? These were quite the guys. I'd like them on my side. Where do we first hear of Caleb? Somebody want to read? Well, before I go into that, let me give you a little background. First place, the conquest had taken place from about 1406 to 1403 BC, and we're now talking about 1399 BC, so 4 to 6 years, 7 years after they started. But think about these men. Of all the group of Israel, and I think Ellen White indicates, the Bible says 600,000 men besides women and children. There were probably about 2 million people. They had, as youngsters, been slaves in Egypt. Taskmaster cracking the whip. Go get your own straw. They had been through and seen God's marvelous dealings in the plagues in Egypt, the Red Sea, and Sinai. They had wandered in the wilderness with the unfaithful ones, nothing to do with them, but they'd wandered with them for 40 years. And now they're coming in and they've taken the land. They've kind of been through it all. But where do we first hear of Caleb? Anybody remember?
Numbers 13:6.
Okay. What was going on there? Who's
Explaining the tribes.
Okay. They go through and they list the spies from each of the tribes. And Joshua is from Ephraim, and Caleb's from Judah. But a little bit later, the spies come back, and what happens? Hey, this is a great land. Let's go take it, right? Well, they did, huh?
They're afraid.
They did say it was a great land, but they're like giants and we're grasshoppers. We can't do it. And Caleb and Joshua tore their clothes and said, yes, we can. And what was, hey, those people, they really appreciated it, right? What happened? They were going to stone him. Such gratitude. And because they didn't believe, they wandered in the wilderness. Now, I think if you work it out, it was 38 years. God gave them time served between Egypt and the time they left Sinai. Okay? But Caleb and Joshua were faithful. And yet they wandered patiently with their people. Now, this was not the first place we heard of Joshua. Back in, I think it was Exodus 17, before they ever got to Sinai, he was having to fight the Amalekites. That's where Aaron and Hur held Moses' hands up. And then in Exodus 24, he went up Mount Sinai with Moses. This was after God had pronounced the Ten Commandments. So we first hear of them because they tried to encourage Israel to go ahead and take the land. I have a question. Would I be like Joshua and Caleb or like the other 10? You don't have to answer out loud. I think I'm probably too much like the other 10, that it just can't happen. Okay? We'll come back to that a little bit. So fast forward. They've spent some time, they've taken Jericho, they've taken these other cities when the kings conspired against them. They've made this pact with the Gibeonites. Somebody want to read Joshua 14, 6 to 14? Anybody? I can read it, but I'd rather you read it. Then the sons of Judah drew near to Joshua in Gilgal And Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, you know the word which the Lord spoke to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old then, when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought word back to him as in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt in fear, and I followed the Lord my God fully. So Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden will be an inheritance to you and to your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God fully. I like this. Now behold, the Lord has let me live just as he spoke these 45 years, from the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, when Israel walked in the wilderness, and now behold, I am 85 years old today. Youngster, right? Now, I'd like you to think about something. They did live longer than we did. But how old, anybody remember how old Joshua was when he died? 110. So a little bit longer. These guys are not youngsters, 85 years old. And I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. As my strength was then, so my strength is now, for war and for going out and coming in. Now then, give me this hill country about which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day that the Anakim were there, and with great fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord will be with me, and I will drive them out as the Lord has spoken. Next couple verses, that's just what he did. By the way, he says the Anakim were there. Who were those people? If you go, They were the giants. You go back in Numbers, this is one of the things in Hebron, the spies were complaining about. There's giants. And it was the sons of Anak, the three sons of Anak. And Caleb says, hey, I'm 85 years old. Give me these people that they said we couldn't take. God will work with me. We'll take care of them. And he did. That's pretty remarkable. Still the same Caleb that had been there 45 years before. Joshua 15, 24 and 25. Somebody want to read that? You can make me read it. I'm sorry. I think I've got a 14 and 15. You got it, Ethan? No? Okay. Now let me back up a verse. Now he, Joshua, they divided the land, gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, a portion among the sons of Judah, according to the command of the Lord to Joshua, namely Kiriath Arba, Arba being the father of Anak, that is Hebron. Caleb drove out from there the three sons of Anak, Shishai and Ahiman and Talmai, the children of Anak. So here's these giants. And I'm 85, we drive them out. But then he did something else. Verse 16, it says he went up against Deborah, but he didn't do it. Caleb said, the one who attacks Kiriath Sefer, which is Deborah, and captures it, I will give to him Aksah, my daughter, as a wife. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, captured it. So he gave him Aksah, his daughter, as a wife. Seems to run in the family. These men are brave. They're not afraid. And by the way, that's a little different kind of marriage than we think of today. So, now what about Joshua? The lesson brings out the next several chapters. You got a lot of names, towns, cities that they gave to the different tribes. Some of them you can find on a map, most of them you can't. But you get over to the end of this, Joshua 19, and it tells all the lots, and then at the end, after they've got everybody else, Joshua 15, verse 49, when they had finished apportioning the land for inheritance by its borders, the sons of Israel gave an inheritance in their midst to Joshua the son of Nun. In accordance with the command of the Lord, they gave him the city for which he asked, Timnath-Serach, in the hill country of Ephraim. So he built the city and settled it. When did Joshua get his inheritance? Last. Can you think of anybody else that did like that in the Bible? How about Abraham and Lot? They're getting crowded, the land's getting overgrazed, and their herdsmen are starting to scrap. And Abraham takes the initiative, and he says, hey, Lot, we need to separate. He was senior. He could have done it, but he says, you go that way, I'll go this way. Or you go that way, I'll go this way. He gave Lot the choice, and he went what was left. And here we find Joshua, whom we understand as a type of Jesus, waiting for everybody else and then getting his inheritance. I have a question. I asked the question earlier. Are we like Caleb and Joshua or the other 10? How do we become like Caleb and Joshua? Just decide, I'm going to be like Caleb and Joshua? Now, I want to point out, we're not all going to be the leaders that they were, even if we are faithful. So I think we need to realize that. There were a lot of people in the time of Christ. He had 12 apostles, and there were other people we didn't hear of that were faithful. But still, it's easy to be like the 10, to look at the things that are seen, that get in our way, and doubt God's ability. So how do we, if we're not like Caleb and Joshua in faith, how do we get like that? How do we do that? Those are nice words. No, Paul, I agree with you. But how do we get that way? Spend time with his word. Okay? Somebody, by the way, I'm looking here, I've got some. Hebrews 11 is the great faith chapter. What is the point of Hebrews 11? I asked that to a non-Adventist minister one day. Without hesitation, he said, Hebrews 12. What's the first word in Hebrews 12? No, not in Hebrews 12. Therefore or wherefore. Some of them say and therefore. That's a connection back to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 is pointing to Hebrews 12. See if I can get somebody to read the first 2 verses of Hebrews 12, besides me. Pardon? First 2 verses.
Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God.
Fixing our eyes on, who did you say, Paula? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. I heard a preacher once say that cross had a hole in it. Jesus was looking beyond that. Okay? I want to read something about this, if I can find my quarterly here. Page 69 in your quarterly, there's an Ellen White quote I think is very tied into this, and I'd just like to read it. Looking unto Jesus, we obtain brighter and more distinct views of God, and by beholding, we become changed. Goodness, love for our fellow men becomes our natural instinct. Growing into his likeness, we enlarge our capacity for knowing God. More and more, we enter into fellowship with the heavenly world, and we have continually increasing power to receive the riches of the knowledge and wisdom of eternity. Looking unto who? Does it make a difference what we focus our thoughts, our minds on? You shook your head, yes. Why? Yeah, if we think about things, that's what we tend to become more like, right? That's why Paul says in Philippians 4:8, whatever things are good, whatever things are pure, what things are lovely, we need to watch what we take into our minds. But it's more, I think, than just not taking bad stuff. It's looking for the blessings that we have, that God has given us, and considering those. Even when things are bad. Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5, I believe it is, says, thank God in all circumstances. Really? Did he say thank God for all circumstances? No. I heard a tape many years ago by Bill Bright, who's deceased now. He was the founder of Campus Crusade for Christ. And he was telling about this young woman that she and her fiance, she was driving, they were going someplace. He wasn't driving because he'd broken his leg skiing. And they had an accident, and he lost his life. And she could not sleep. She was on medication. And she came to talk to Bill Bright. And I don't remember the order, but he gave 2 verses. Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, who are called according to purpose. I'll say, start. Do you believe that? Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. And it finally dawned on her, she wasn't. Then he went to, I don't remember the order again, 1 Thessalonians, thank God in all circumstances. Do you believe that? Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. She went home and slept for the first time. She learned, yes, I would rather not been, but she learned that God had her good in mind and to trust him. I remember that, and I've knelt down a few times and prayed, thank you. Not like that. But that's a lesson we need to learn. Somebody want to read? And I'll close with this. Give you a little extra time again. Romans 12:1 and 2. Well-known verse, passage.
I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your body a living sacrifice, a wholly acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove that is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Thank you. Do not be conformed to this world. Let your mind be renewed. I'd like to read that from 2 fairly free versions. Phillips. Don't let the world around you squeeze you into its mold, but let God remake you so that your whole attitude of mind is changed. And the New Living Translation, which, by the way, I think is actually a fairly free but a fairly good translation. I use the New American Standard, which is supposed to be the closest to the original, and there are places that the NLT is better than the New American Standard. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know what God's will is, that which is good pleasing, and perfect. We have a choice, what we can look at, what we can think about. And I'm talking to myself more than I'm talking to any of you. What do we look at? Now, I think it's also true that God doesn't necessarily give us faith today for what we need tomorrow. So we shouldn't be borrowing, oh my goodness, am I ready for the time of trouble? We need to walk with Jesus day by day by day and let him take care of tomorrow. Okay, let's close with prayer. Our Father in heaven, thank you that we could have this time together. I pray that as we go forth, we would represent you more. I pray that you would be with us in the after service, be with Pastor Andre as he brings the message, touch his lips with the coal from the altar, and our hearts and our ears that we would hear, and let us reflect your love to those we meet this week. In Jesus' name, amen.